Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Albert David Lewandowski, presenting the topic, Managing Trust Between Multiple Clouds and Non-Human Identities Without Passwords.
Hello and welcome. Today I would like to talk about one subject which in most cases is forgotten. So it's about non-human identities, so all kind of applications, service accounts, API key, certificates which we use in our applications. And it's also directly connected to how we manage it in the cloud, how we manage in hybrid infrastructure, and also in multi-cloud environment. My background is directly in big data, cloud, and cybersecurity. I spent many years on migrating systems from one environment to another one, and I also spent a lot of time on investigating how we can protect specifically service accounts. And in the beginning, we need to start with some definitions, because when we talk about applications, in most cases, even from cybersecurity perspective, it's not so widely known, or in fact, it's not there is not enough taking care about the applications. As when you join the company, you need to set up multi-factor authentication. You need to pass through multiple different tutorials, and also you need to read a lot of internal articles about security. But when we go to the applications, do we really care about security and what kind of access all applications in our environment have? Because that's also a very interesting shift which is happening at this moment in the market. In the past, all cybersecurity solutions were directly focused on misconfiguration, providing static and dynamic code analysis. And immediately, I would say, but it's not but it's the continuous process that 2 or 3 years ago, we started to think, okay, we have a very specific application which is responsible for making backup of our database. And this specific application has full read-write access to our production database. Think about any bank, insurance company, government. If you would be the attacker, you wouldn't attack someone who has the basic read privileges. You would attack someone to have all of these admin privileges. And that's the very nice sweet spot for in fact discovering threats. And that's the subject which was forgotten for many years, because the identity is not only about the people in the company, but it's also about each single application, server. And nowadays, when we talk about cloud on-premise, we cannot take a look only into cloud environments. We rely on multiple software as a service. Simple example, marketing or accounting teams. In many cases, they rely on the data which we directly in the IT digital team, depending on the naming convention, we provide to them. And they may use some third-party tools for which we may not have this observability. So we do not know what's happening in this data. Another part is also related directly to this approach of serverless, because that was the promise of cloud, in which many people believed that is in 100% true, that we go to the cloud, we do not need to care about anything. Everything is, use as you go, pay as you go. And later, a lot of companies discovered that cloud is great, but it's still someone's servers. And it's directly connected to managing all secrets credentials. We use for many years solutions for example, HashiCorp Vault. In cloud, we have secret managers, but later we go to some operational challenges. One case is about how we distribute secrets, how we manage .env files for our web applications, or how we guarantee that all secrets which are delivered, for example, to the application deployed on Kubernetes, how we can ensure that these credentials will not be used by anyone who has read access and who is able just to run the command. Go to the container directly and just make print-env. Another challenge is related to this configuration management. We have automation tool. It's great. But when we go how we manage and how we can ensure that on all systems across the company, it will work. And as today we already have a lot of technical talks, a lot of like this engineering side. And during my work, I discovered one thing that we as engineers, we can do absolutely everything. We can deliver any kind of the tool which we can imagine. And we also do not have in many cases any kind of like limitations that we do not look into many things even like from legal perspective or like business risk, because we have like this point of view as engineers, right? So we analyze in most cases based on data, based on the things which we perceive as they are the best. When we talk about security, the biggest challenge is in combining legacy and modern applications. When we have this unique capability to build product like from scratch, it's great because we can implement all the best practices from day one. But what will happen when we have legacy system? Here we can go one more time to the banking industry, which is a great case, especially when when some of the internal system may rely on old applications from 80s, 90s, which may not support multi-factor authentication, or which may just have vulnerability, but no one will touch it because any modification can provide the outage of the system. So here we go to the continuity, and like this, I would say the most fascinating part of engineering daily work. So like in fact balancing and finding the right solution for very difficult challenges. Next part is also about approaching to the team when we talk about embedding security, especially when we talk about applications. Developers would like to deliver all the features as fast as it's possible. And one of the challenge which I observed is in fact that some solutions may impact their daily work. It may just make everything longer. So in this case, when there is like this no involvement, in fact, of the people who are authors of the most vulnerable or the most critical part, they are not on board, well, it will fail. Of course, you can like fill in Excel, yes, it's done, but it will fail. And it's also about developing like this value proposition. Security in many cases is nice to have. And in many companies, there's just not enough awareness what is the impact and how, in fact, it can optimize costs. You can think about any case in which you had to request access from someone. You had to call to your internal, another like the IT department, or you had to request. That's the reason why currently there is like a huge shift to all kind of tools which are about providing just-in-time access. It connects directly to implementing the single pane of glass across organization. We have Active Directory, which is a great example of this like single pane of glass across organization, as most organizations rely on Active Directory. We have like the tool which is used across all the systems, starting from engineering, through business analysts, ending directly in the accounting. And now it's time, I think, for the report which is mentioned in any presentation which is about non-human identities. Here you have like the data from 2023 report from Microsoft. Not long time ago was presented like the updated version for 2024. So that we have like the ratio of service accounts to human accounts 10:1. And based on the research made by Microsoft, only 1% of all of these permissions are used. And another interesting point is like over 50% of all accounts are perceived as high risk, so that they have administrative privileges in the environment. And that's like the spot in which no one took care, because it it wasn't important. But then when we already built this fundaments, so that we provided multi-factor authentication for users, also additional protection against phishing, we discovered that okay, but guys, we have also applications which just work, and well, we do not care. That's also the thing about any kind of IoT or OT devices. In hybrid environments, we have this additional challenge that we need to combine different systems responsible for identity and access management. In the on-premise, in most cases, we can rely on Active Directory, or when we are in single cloud, we can rely on IAM. And that's the solution which is enough for many organizations. But when we go to use any kind of software as a service, when we start to use additional third party, one case which is related like to Gen AI is that we need also to ensure how our employees will take advantage of any kind of AI solutions. That's like the case that Samsung employees provided some of confidential data of their semiconductors products directly to ChatGPT. And these data have been used directly by ChatGPT. So it's like the major problem to know what kind of accounts our users, our applications use internally. As in some cases, like as always, there is the case that someone in the team must do a POC very quickly. And that's especially like popular like in startups or in some scale-ups or some like software houses, in which the most important part is to deliver a product as fast as it's possible. And in such case, we can find that people may use a lot of like shortcomings, or for example, instead of waiting for someone to create the account in third-party service, they would use their private Google account. And in fact, we as organization will lose the visibility of this account because it's not managed, it's not connected to anything what is like internal. And here we go to the point that we need to have like this single enforcement. And one more time, like Active Directory is a great example, as each one of us like know Active Directory. And that's also the thing which is like the huge challenge when we talk especially about applications and about more complex than single cloud or single on-premise in single data center ecosystem. Here we also go to another like challenges related, like should it be the client installed on the device and then someone will need to maintain it, update, or should it be a proxy to which everyone will be connected to and will use it as single point of enforcement, single point of trust? And about like high-level ideas, because you can find a lot of solutions, and it's like still the market which is like in early development stage, as we still do not have like the single standard for everything. We can see that Microsoft with Entra, so former Azure Active Directory, wants to do it. So they want to become the single identity provider for absolutely everything and everyone anywhere. We'll see how it will go, but well, we can be sure that Microsoft has this power and in fact almost unlimited resources to promote a specific setup for environments. So one idea which is like interesting from the side directly of applications. Imagine that we have like multiple virtual machines, Kubernetes deployed across different cloud providers. So one idea is that we may route the whole traffic to a single gateway, which will be responsible to injecting secrets or to verifying if the request from a specific application, which is deployed on the virtual machine, which is signed, and we have like the information that yeah, it's like an immutable state. It wasn't modified by anyone who was like outside the organization or by someone who wasn't authorized. Then okay, you can pass the request. Another case is that we may have like the set of gateways. So instead of enabling like the even internal communication, everything would go through the proxies. So like the one case which we have on Kubernetes is Istio. Another one which would require additional development work is about providing like the additional API integration. So that we have the client which is responsible for issuing its own certificate, its own token, and then we can use something that some companies call that is kind of like multi-factor authentication or multi-factor validation for our service account applications. Because the main challenge is in fact to create and to implement something that can be used by all applications out of the box. As any kind of the change or new integrations means a lot of cost, and it may cause the one thing which no one would like to see. So the outage of the system in production. And when we talk about like this authentication, it's really important to understand also the part of the secrets. as whenever we talk about post-quantum encryption, quantum key distribution, all of these nice buzzwords, we go to a simple question. How do we know that the new joiner in our ecosystem can be trusted? So currently we may rely on certificates, and with certificates we have one main disadvantage, which is about the maintenance aspects and how it can be achieved. How can it be done? Who will be responsible for rotating all of them? And well, in theory, like certificates is great, but later when we go deeply like into integration, it's not so nice. And when we have like the integration over API key, we need to deliver this API key directly to the application. And that's also like the part in which cloud becomes a great tool, because we can simply integrate with the cloud provided secret manager. We can configure a specific plugin, or we can provide that there will be like the sync, or that the application will get the secret by issuing it directly from secret manager, as it has assigned like the specific role in the specific cloud environment. But the thing is, and that's like our end goal, that there will be also passwordless for applications. Now we talk about passwordless for people, right? That we can be verified based on this, that we have our own laptop, we have our unique behavior. It's like in mobile banking application. But like one of the factor of authentication is that we are detected that that we are like the trusted people because we use our phone in exactly the same way as always. If there is any discrepancy, then we'll be requested, for example, to provide the SMS code. And the main challenge is about like issuing this zero secret case. It's not like the problem when we are in single cloud, but when we like in multiple environments, then it becomes the problem. It's also about like removing this vendor lock, which is like especially a big challenge for big organizations. So the idea is mainly like to issue these short-lived credentials. So it's like in AWS we have IAM roles, which are valid for a short period of time. And that's like the goal which we would like to implement also for any kind of machine-to-machine communication. But there will be the way that each single actor in our system will be able to be detected. And here we have also like some solutions that we can inject secrets directly into runtime. And it's also like related that from security perspective, we would like to avoid providing any kind of secrets to the applications, as we would like also to have a centralized governance of any kind of the credentials usage across the system. So that's the place in which, in fact, that's like a great domain, and I'm very curious how it will look within next 5 or 10 years, as it's directly related to any kind of like the incident response. So in case of incident response, that's also like a very nice place in which AI will join the game, right? So that AI will support us in any kind of the logs analytics, and AI will be also very useful to detect any kind of the malicious change, modification directly in our system. About the cloud, I would like to say that it's always like the best possible environment for small and medium enterprises, because it provides everything out of the box. Building team from scratch, it's extremely difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. And that's also like like this perfect environment, but it becomes not so beautiful when we start to use anything externally, or even when we try like to connect with some additional data providers, as we may just lose the visibility over what's going on across the whole ecosystem. And the good part is that we can like automate most of the stuff, and we can also like use the single way to deploy our things, and that's the spot in which containerization is absolutely like one of the most beautiful thing, because in fact to protect what we have may be even enough to provide like digital signatures of our binaries, of our image, and that we can verify this signature. And that's also like the one thought which came to my mind like several months ago, that Well, in cybersecurity, it's not about protecting 100% of the system. It's just about creating so many different checkpoints that will be able to detect on a specific one that something is not right. As like providing this like full 360 solution is just not doable in IT. It's just not possible to deploy everything and configure like in perfect secure way, because later we go like to any kind of the like business requirement that there need to be done a specific exception for specific applications because of the following 1, 2, 3 for business reason. It's also, I think, nowadays we live in very interesting years also that we started to think that okay, we have our company data. That's like a kind of like the internal gold. And how and why do we share some of this information with other companies? And that will be like the another important shift, going from this some of this software as a service to go directly to the internal tools. As always, it's about like the risks and cost balancing. As first of all, we need to remember like about the cost, about our budget, and what kind of risks we can mitigate, and what is like the possible impact of them. One thing which is always like important when we talk about the security and managing any kind of the applications is to implement like the policy into development, into cloud, that absolutely everything is code. It's like the step-by-step process, as I have never seen the project in which someone was able to deploy like the everything as code and to pushing everything over CI/CD with all like the test cases from day one. It's like the process in which everyone must be involved, and it's also about delivering the tools to people, because in many cases, for example, like development team may be against some changes because it will take more time for them, like to build, run tests, and then waiting for the pull request to be approved. But when they see the value and we can also like automate their work, then they will join directly all of these efforts. And as always, it's about like defining right strategy. As we can observe in end domains related to IT that we like doing trendy stuff. Currently, it's like about Gen AI, about large or small language models. And it's also like about like some buzzwords, right? That now we are doing like API security, now we are doing some identity security, now we are doing some just-in-time access. It's like about building the strategy and defining what are the goals for our organization, as it will also differ based on the industry in which you work. As in some cases, like it's exactly like with Kubernetes. A lot of companies moved to the Kubernetes because it's trendy. And they were like, okay, we can auto scale, like we can scale up, scale down. And I was like, I think in 2 projects in which someone like promised like that it will be scaled up, scaled down, but the application itself wasn't prepared for it. And it's like connected about like this providing the protection for applications. It's always like about this impact and defining whether it's important or not. As in some cases, just following like the basic best practices which you can find anywhere in the internet, it will be enough. As any kind of the impact for the company will be negligible. And what is also important to understand what kind of the resources we have already in the company. It goes directly to questions about future. So what will happen in the market and how it will work. So the first, and I would say the most important trend, will be about implementing the passwordless. As currently one of the most frequently mentioned issue is about like the credentials leakage. It's also related to this one that people in many teams may manage passwords in not secure way. And even big companies, with very like extended cybersecurity teams with multiple factor authentications, they can become like the victim directly. And that's what we saw, for example, with Uber breach, when one guy from the Uber also like provided the multi-factor authentication code directly to the attacker. So, of course, like one of the biggest vector of any attack is directly in us, directly in human, but one part is about like education, and second is about reducing this risk. Because if user, like they do not have in fact password, or they are requested to provide like multiple different factors which are like outside the password or outside something that they need to type in like manually, it will be secure. And it's also like another part which is about like learning the behavior analytics. So understanding how users behave and also how applications behave. As it's not like the rocket science, it's not very advanced artificial intelligence to see that, okay, we have a specific application which has like a specific scheduled job to make, for example, a dump of database. And this job is done only once at 12 hours. So we can define also like the rule and start building just-in-time access for applications. Because if we started to do it directly for developers, directly for engineering team, directly for business analysts, why don't we do it for applications? And it's also connected, in fact, to the, in many cases, lack of the solutions which are, bulletproof and which have been already proved in the market. This is like quite new domain. And it's also about providing the secure way to manage access, as the best permissions for the users, in fact, is to get rid of any permissions. So they just need to ask for the permissions only for a specific period of time, and then someone or something, so for example, like the AI agent can decide if someone is allowed or not. Another challenge which will happen is about building the single system to control access. Currently, we have multiple different open source solutions and also ideas how we can tackle this aspect, as we have in some cases role-based access control, attributes-based access control, and it's like very complex across different environments. Just think about the Kubernetes and the default role-based access control. In most cases, it's just left as default because it's just like not straightforward to set it up, and in many cases it just it's not mentioned as something important, because that's also how even like the leakage, like in the American army, happened, right? That one young guy had full access to all the data which was delivered to the president of the United States. So that's like the very interesting operational challenge about which you can think about, which is still like not solved, and that's also like the goal, because currently we have multiple systems and we operate. But at one point of time, there will be the time that we'll have like this everything centralized. And that's also what we can observe in cybersecurity market, that all the companies are moving to be like centralized, right? So we can see that another company acquired like another startup or another player in the market. It's connected directly to unifying like the access policies, as it's very interesting that currently we focus specification, we talk about unifying of billing and costs for cloud providers. Currently it's still like in beta, but I think that in a short period of time there should be like this final specification, so that we'll be able to get information about all billing in single format. And that's also the Thing initiative, which I believe some of the like Things Foundation or Cloud Native will take care, so to develop the standardized access policy languages and also to standardize identity data. Of course, we have like the solution, and we have like the standard, which is like the, for example, SPIFE, which is like implemented, or some of the SPIFE specifications that have been already like implemented into cloud providers, but still it's not aligned. And it's also about like the market battle between major identity providers and also like the cloud, because from perspective of each single cloud provider is always the problem when you go to multi-cloud, because you may leave them, or then you have like this like additional environment to which you can move more of the workload. Next part is about, in fact, providing like this security development kit, as that's what I observed in many projects, that there were like some added requirements, but there was not provided enough specific tools to be implemented, or that developers were kind of like left alone. And it's also like connected to how simply we can implement the security framework into our infrastructure. And it's also about like providing two-way access control that we can verify everything anytime. That's like the idea of zero trust. But with zero trust, there is like this challenge that business can say, yeah, we would like to have zero trust. But when it's implemented, then it only generates like more issues and questions. How is it going? It's also when we talk about artificial intelligence and when we talk about anything like in 2023, 2024, it's about data security. As like one side is about like like the applications, and second, which is in fact the full separate domain of data engineering, is about understanding what kind of data sets, what kind of data sits in the employees' computers. Like one is like directly about databases. As in some cases, we may not be able to connect the database with IAM system of the cloud. Or in many companies, like we have like the full protection of the cloud system, but users generate like CSV file, which later they process directly on their local computer. And I wish that there will be like the day when the Python will be like general available in the Excel, and then there will be like the right time for also like pushing for more plugins and more advanced solutions. Also to analyze and to make like the proper data security, including just-in-time access for the data which sits directly in the Excel. When we talk about like the applications and service accounts itself, the most important part will be about like using multiple different trust factors. Currently, we may use like the service account. We can also have the information about like the state, so we can have a kind of like fingerprint signature of a specific machine, of a specific server, adding to this one that this machine should work in a specific subnet. It will be like the complex ID, unique secure ID of the application of our server, which will enable which will grant this specific application to have access, for example, to database or to any kind of internal service. And that's all what I prepared for you. So I think that now it may be time for questions. And well, like I think the last thought is that well, it's like the domain which is still not solved. So if you have any good ideas, like they're waiting a lot of money from American investors.
Thank you for your talk. And as you mentioned, do we have questions in the hall? Or maybe Slido? Yes.
Question is maybe is some tools who can scan the whole system and find this all permission denies and.
Can you say again? What?
Is any tool who can scan the system and manage these permissions?
So about like the scanning misconfigurations, currently we have like multiple solutions, especially in fact we have one group of like open source solutions, and second is like the cloud security posture management, which are strictly focused on detecting misconfiguration and also providing you a recommendation that if you have the specific IAM role, then you should, for example, remove the asterisk from the policy. So we have the tools which are like the support for making the review and then implementing, But I would say it's like this. It's similar state like to the DevOps industry. That many years ago we didn't have like all of this like automation tool. Nowadays, like for example, when we have Ansible, we have like everything automated, and we do not only rely on this like more static approach.
Thank you. More questions? Then I'll go. In infrastructure, there is something called chaos engineering, where they run tests to basically break things rather randomly and see how robust the system still stays. Is there something in a security domain that can either try to exploit, like automatically exploit the system and see how it goes?
Yeah, so in fact, like the one part is about even like the dynamic application security testing. And it's also like, in fact, the whole domain of even like the threat modeling and also like, like trying to break things, because like the most common is still like the pen testing, as in many cases, I would say it's still like the people are the best engineers to break the system. And I think it will be very interesting case like for Gen AI. I know that is like overused, but in fact, when we would be able, like to get all information about all CVEs to the system, and then it would may try like to infiltrate the system, or like trying to make like the insider attack, right? So in fact, like impersonate someone from IT administration team who has like quite administrative privileges.
Okay, and a little bit off-topic question maybe. Do you know what is the most prevalent type of security risk? If it's actually getting the access to the system or some zero-day exploits?
Honestly, like in most cases, it's still about human. So it's still like about like stealing credentials. And of course, like when we go to the internet, right, it's also about like advertisement and marketing. Companies would present, but still like in fact, the weakest point of the system are directly humans. And still I can tell you like case from like one company, which is like in the critical infrastructure domain, that like the internal cybersecurity team makes simple check, simple test, because they bought domain which is quite similar to the official one. They even put a huge yellow banner in the mail that take a look if the domain is valid, and still like 15% of all the recipients, well, they clicked on the link. So unfortunately, it's also like quite difficult to automate it, because we can have like advanced like anti-phishing system, a lot of education, but still like how could we like prevent users in many cases from doing action? As it's not always about clicking link, it's sometimes even about like downloading the file and then providing this data somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. And last question from my side would be, what is your take on role of open source in security?
Well, I'm a big fan of open source, so I may not be like the fully objective, but I believe that like the open source code is also like the great way to increase the level of security, as we have like more people who are involved in checking, and it's also like in fact much easier to understand what are like the vulnerabilities, because we have the visibility into all packages, and in many cases also like the open source community, they take care of this shift left approach, and also like providing like the scanning and additional testing. So I would say is like the way of everyone to provide like these joint forces to make everything more secure.
And do you see open source as a source of threat, actually?
I would say that it's like there's a mitigation of risk for many cases. As well, in IT, everyone, and as in any domain of life, we can make some mistakes, and they may appear like the additional bugs. But the thing is whether, we are prepared to mitigate it, and whether we have like in fact, disaster recovery plan.
Gotcha. Thank you. We got first question on Slido. What is that you would like us to take away from your talk?
I would say one thing: just take a look into your service accounts and applications and how you manage access. Sometimes it's just about like understanding what's going on in your infrastructure, and then you take action. As in many cases, it's just like about like leaving some components like in the dark, and we do not care because we try not to look into them.
Thank you. Questions from the hall, maybe? Okay, I take it as a no. You can always find our great speaker outside of the booth, and at the corner for Ask Me Anything. There are like two small couches where you can sit down and people will find you. Otherwise, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for being here. And yeah.